Hello, and welcome to Stories Across Borders. Here we discuss stories told across a range of different mediums books, movies, games, you name it. The only rule is that we can only discuss things in terms of the writing. Anything like acting, animation, art, etc., is off limits, unless it relates directly to the way the story is being told. I am Daniel Radford, author, man wearing glue on facial hair, and also your host. And today I'm joined again by my usual co-host, John Kernan.
Hi, I will do anything to fix my mistakes, even go back in time and be depressed.
I like that you completely skip over the glue on facial hair thing to do your own bit because you have no context.
I have no context for that one, so I didn't try.
You watched the animated version where they don't do that. Anyway,
Yeah, you gotta tell me about that somewhere along this episode.
today we're continuing our cycle on crime stories with John's selection for the cycle, actually, Erased. Erased was originally, I mean, it still is, but it started as a manga series written and illustrated by Kei Sanbei. And it was later adapted as both a live action drama and an animated series, kind of around the same time. One was 2016, one was 2017. And Erased is an interesting crime drama and mystery that incorporates pretty heavily a sort of supernatural time travel element, which is a fun twist on it because, of course, crime isn't a genre, it's a topic. So stories built on crime can take all kinds of interesting forms. Before we do get into the actual meat of the situation, though, there's a bunch of warnings to get through for this one. So first and foremost, we're actually going to get ahead of this before we get into it for once. Content warning.
Yeah, a very real. I mean, all the content warnings are real, but this one is like, no. One of the major aspect of this story is multiple content warnings.
Yeah, to be clear, the story of Erase is built very largely around not just a murder, although there's plenty of that in there, but also various forms of child abuse. So if you don't want to hear about that, and I would not blame you if you don't, maybe skip this episode and probably skip Erased.
Yeah, I'm sure you're probably thinking you've seen a lot of anime or watched a lot of shows with child abuse, but this one has it much more in the foreground and is a very important central topic and also depicts it much more realistically. And to be fair, I've only seen so much child abuse. But the thing that makes me know in my core how much more realistic than most other stuff I watched is that it made me uncomfortable. And watching stuff doesn't easily make me actually uncomfortable.
Other than that, which is the more important warning, this is a story that is also built very much around a sort of mystery element in large part. So, spoiler warning also very much in effect.
Yeah, if this is your time to go watch the show, watch either of the shows or read the manga. They're good. So don't hesitate to do that. We'll be here when you come back.
Yep, and there's plenty of other stuff you could find us into in the meantime. Right, with all that out the way, now we can get into the episode. As I was saying, Erased is it's an interesting example of a crime story because it's not your typical police procedural or legal drama or even like typical crime story in a lot of ways. It is built around a supernatural sort of time travel element. The plot is more or less as follows. Our central protagonist is Satoru Fujinuma, who is 29 at the start of the story in sort of and it's which is set in like 2006, I think. He
Right.
works at a
I think I
yeah,
had like just turned 29 or was about to when we watched it as well. Or not just turned 29, but I was 29.
which is currently how old I am. So how about that? But he works at a pizza place and is sort of like a freelance manga author on the side, although that's not going super well for him. What makes him interesting is that he has this weird power that he just has no understanding of why it's there. It's just something that happens to him. This phenomenon, I should say, he calls revival. Where every now and then, when something really bad is going to happen in his vicinity, he will, or happens rather, he finds himself suddenly transported back in time to just before it happens. Usually it's like 1 to 5 minutes.
I always really enjoy when a character who has a mostly pretty vague special talent still gives it a name because they're in a world where stories like comics or manga or like fantasy stories exist and they're like, I gotta call this something. It's this sounds about right. I feel like this is something one of the characters I like would have.
A character I would write would call it this, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are actually introduced to him through the lens of this happening pretty quickly. He spots a guy or witnesses a car crash because a guy in a sort of truck has a heart attack at the wheel and is hurting towards his kid. There's a big accident, and then suddenly he's chucked back 5 minutes and goes and stops that, save the day, but gets injured and put in hospital as well himself, which prompts his mum, whose name is Sachiko Fujinuma, to come out to where he lives and sort of just keep an eye on him a bit, do the mum thing because she's a good mum like that. And when they're walking out of the hospital together, and I think it's more or less the same in the animated version. I haven't seen that for a while. I watched the live action one much more recently. Suddenly experiences it again on the way out of the hospital or like out of the shops or something like that.
And the weird part is, doesn't know why. Nothing's happened yet.
He has no idea why, and he just sort of goes, "Look, this is gonna sound weird to his mom, but like I just have a really bad feeling right now. Could you just like look around with me and see if anything catches your attention?" And she notices a little girl being led away by a man, and he notices her noticing and stops attempting to kidnap this girl and bails basically. Yay, child saved. Unfortunately, she is later killed in Satoru's apartment. He finds her body and is framed for murdering his mom. And as he is fleeing from the police, he experiences revival again. Except he is not transported back 5 minutes to before her death, but strangely back to 1988, where he finds himself now inhabiting the body of his sort of 10, 11-year-old self.
Which gives us our first piece of evidence that this ability it seems to be a lot more powerful and all-encompassing than we thought, but also in a way a lot more scary and horrible to experience.
Yeah, he has no control over this.
It seems like whatever the thing that threatens his life or is going to ruin everything is, he's going to be sent back to as far back as the problem goes.
As far back as necessary, yeah. And this is, I mean, it's very confusing for him to begin with because he has no idea why this would happen, what the link is. And then he sort of goes, well, hang on. When I was this age, there was a sort of crime epidemic where a bunch of kids were taken and died.
Could this be related to that? I can't think of anything else awful and scary and threatening that was going on back then.
Yeah, it was two or three girls and one boy, all sort of classmates of his, or at the very least in the vicinity of his school. Because one of them did go to a different school. And he's like, "This is the only thing I can think of that could possibly this it could be is that somehow this crime that another guy, an older like young adult guy that he was friends with, was put in jail for as well. There has to be a link between the crime that this guy was imprisoned for, that I believe is innocent, and what happened to his mum." And he basically draws this link and goes, right, in order to stop what happens is going to happen to Sachiko, his mom, he figures he has to stop what is going to happen in 1988, starting with this girl Ko, who was the first to go, basically the first kid to go missing and turn up dead, which is difficult because and this is about where the content warnings start coming in. She is already an abuse victim. Her mum is horribly physically violent. She is ostracized and isolated in every possible way, which means she is an ideal target. And that means in order to prevent her from being a victim, he has to prevent her from being a target. So he goes out of his way to befriend this girl and make her part of his group and get her out of this abusive situation.
Which in a way is already saving her a lot more than he knew, like a simple kind action can often save people in such situations.
Yeah. And he does seemingly succeed at first, only to discover when he is suddenly chucked back to his own timeline where things have changed around and he's still on the run, that she just died like a couple days later instead. So he's now back in his current time, still trying to figure out everything that's going on. He's still on the He's still a fugitive. He's being aided by this teenage girl he works with, Irie, who is bubbliness personified, is the best way to describe her.
We love Irie.
And she's like doing her best to help him not be arrested, but accidentally leads them right to him. And as he's being taken away, he suddenly gets chucked right back into the past again to a couple days before KO would go missing the second time in the second version. Goes through this massive amount of effort again to save this abused girl like, all over again. Succeeds in getting her picked up by Child Protective Services or whatever they call it in Japan. The story diverges a little bit here between the animated one and the live action one. In the animated version, KO is basically written out here. She's taken to live with her grandparents and they don't really see her again. In the live action one, she does remain part of the plot more, which is important because it does make it a little bit easier for him to approach other girls to try and talk to them and get them part of the group and stuff like that. Um, so she remains part of the story in the live action. Not a major character, but still part of it, which is nice. Anyway, he then continues on this crusade, trying to basically prevent isolated people from being targets, viable targets.
And before we get too much further in, I want to say, just because I feel like I'm going to forget this feeling, I know it's something you only see so much, but this is my favorite depiction, at least personality wise, I've ever seen of an older person in a younger body, because he's not just randomly acting like a kid or constantly being wiser and more mature than everyone else. He's literally like split almost halfway between being his adult self and being who he was at that time, both because he's back in time, but also because like he has a child's brain and hormones
Yes,
despite having his adult personality and experiences. And you see that like kind of force the childishness into him or leaking out of him from time to time, even as he's trying to work on his adult knowledge and experience.
and agenda. And yeah, no, you're right. It is a trope that is played out semi often, especially in like Japanese media, is this idea of being chucked back in time to be your younger self. Happens in Western media too, but it's less of a trope here, I think.
Hmm.
And it is also one of my favorite depictions of that idea because he has all of his adult knowledge and is trying to still act like himself. But it's true, he still has he's in a body with a child's brain now. It's not like he is a disembodied soul. This is still this is his body now. He does not have the fully developed brain, so he makes childish mistakes and has childish outbursts and still very much acts like his childhood self in a lot of ways because he is. It's not a separate entity. He's just been reverted back to that body, that version of himself. And the only thing that occasionally makes it different is he still has his knowledge from the other timeline.
Imagine having bad habits or certain annoying, immature personality traits you thought you grew out of or worked past years ago, just suddenly forcing them back into the forefront of your everyday interactions.
Yeah.
That's got to be frustrating. Especially that moment of, was I like this?
Yeah.
Damn.
Whilst trying to prevent multiple crimes in across two timelines. He's got it rough. But yeah, so once KO is saved, he shifts his attentions to this to another girl, and then from there to a former bully of KO's who is now being isolated herself, and also kind of the boy because the boy, what's his name?
I'm forgetting now too.
It's that
Um,
his surname is SUG something. Uh, Anyway, he
Osan?
was already part of their friend group. He was just a viable target because he is off. His parents both work, so he's often home alone, like quite late for his age and stuff like that. But by keeping him in the loop, involved in their activities, he's also actively protecting him.
If I remember right, it was also because he was a little effeminate and girly looking, because I
Well,
think this
yes,
serial killer does specifically target girls.
yes, that is correct. The ongoing theory. This bit is more prominently mentioned in the animated version than the live action, but
Uh,
especially at a distance, this kid is easily mistaken for being a girl, and yeah, that made him between the isolation and that made him a target as well. But by looping him into the situation and getting his help in protecting these other potential victims, they are keeping him around people and also preventing him from being a target as well. But the other girl, the former bully of KO's, now the victim because of what she did to KO, becomes the last in the line of people that they're trying to protect. Unfortunately, the serial killer here has started realizing that young Satoru is actively preventing him from killing people, and is constantly beating him to his targets and removing them from being viable targets for him.
which definitely makes him a target, because besides the basic practical reason, the guy also has to wonder how.
Yeah,
How is
it's,
this? How is a kid doing this?
and well, he's also started to get invested in this cat and mouse game that they've got going. Like
Yeah.
he says himself at one point, "This is the most alive I've ever felt." Me trying to kill these girls and you trying to prevent me. Like he very much envisions this as a Batman Joker situation. Satoru does not see it this way.
Satoru is very refreshing in just seeing this as exactly what it is. He is trying to prevent some very bad things to happen. He already didn't want those things happening, except now he's getting personally invested and learning the stories of and getting to know people he never knew in his original life, and they're becoming important to him at the same time, which is making it that much heavier.
Yeah. So, and the spoilers are coming at this point. Fair warning. The
Yeah, we're
killer,
about out of innocent things to say.
the killer uses this other girl, the bully turned victim, as bait. Essentially, makes it appear like she's been taken in this truck, and then makes it appear as though he is being conscripted by Satoru to drive after this truck because as it turns out, and the reveal here is slightly earlier for you than it happens for Satoru, but basically the killer this whole time has been the very supportive, helpful teacher
Yeah.
who is called his name is Gaku Yashiro, I believe,
Yes.
and he has now tricked Satoru into getting into this car with him, drives to this frozen lake, and is like, "Well, here's how this is going to be. I don't like losing to you. I have to kill you now for many reasons. You partially because I've just revealed myself to you, and partially just to get rid of you because you're a problem, and partially because I feel obligated to because of this cat and mouse thing we've got going on. But the reward you get for that is that I will leave this town alone. I will go somewhere else." As like a weird show of respect almost. And then he traps Satoru in a car, gets out, and lets it roll into a frozen lake. What he doesn't count on is that Satoru actually survives.
And in a way, also what we don't count on, because if Satoru's life isn't in actual danger, then he doesn't get a reset.
Yeah, he is then in a coma for 15 years and comes out the coma and it had lost most of his memories, but then sees some things that start triggering things to like piece back together. Realizes who did it and realizes that the reason his mum was killed was because she recognized Yashiro outside the hospital at one time trying to basically take this other girl. because Yashiro is like on the board of the hospital or something like that.
He's very connected everywhere. He had basically all of the tools, social standing, and connections he needed to be the ideal serial killer.
And he realizes that this other young girl who he sort of befriends when he comes out the coma, they're like in the same rehab or things like this. She's very cute.
Yeah.
Adorable little kid. I've just forgotten her name though.
It was nice to have one shining light in the feeling of, "Oh, man, he did all that to save these people, and his reward is actually losing all of the time between when the story started and going back in time." Not just some of it didn't happen, none of it ever
Kumi.
happened anymore. Life gone.
Yeah.
Literally half of his life erased by
Yeah.
that coma.
Kumi was her name. Leukemia patient.
I just
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
realized
you off. I just
you no, you're good. I just realized I think that's a more unique, I think that's a more unique element of the story than I thought of before. There's a lot of stories where you go back in time and change things, but how many stories are like, no, in the process of going back in time, you literally gave up half your life because half of the life that he had already lived through that he was trying to kind of get back and make slightly better just is gone now. Not only did it not happen, he literally didn't live it at all. He didn't even live a different life. It's just gone.
for a while he doesn't even realize that that was actually his second run already.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have the memories of experiencing revival and growing to adulthood the first time round.
He's brain damaged. He was in a coma.
Yeah, for 15 years. The fact that his mom is like just the best is the only reason he wasn't just taken off life support.
Literally, like, one of the best anime moms of all time, right up at the top
Yeah,
of the lift. There's a lot of good anime moms, but most good anime moms are, like, perfect,
I mean,
flawless human beings, and part of why I love.
fictional moms in general. Let's be honest.
Yeah, and part of what's great about Sachiko is she's neither perfect or terrible. She's an amazing mom, but extremely real. She's so real and still just a really good, hardworking person who supports her son with literally her entire being.
She's so good. But yeah, so she recognized him. That's why Sachiko was killed in the original timeline. And now that he is awake and getting his memories back, Sachiko is realizing that Yashiro is around still, and then realizes that he's actually targeting Kumi. The exact form it takes varies between the animated version and the live action one. The live action one honestly does it a bit better, in my opinion. But the general gist is the same. He sets up a sting operation effectively that saves Kirby, saves himself, and reveals Yashiro as the killer all along and gets him caught and stuck on death row. That's the story, complete with the twist spoiled. So if that was a problem for you and you kept listening, that you brought this upon yourself.
You were given your spoiler warnings.
I suppose now we can actually talk about the like writing and stuff. So again, it's a very good example of how we often. This is one of those things where we always think of crime stories as a genre, but the reality is it's a topic.
Yeah. Crime is a thing that happens. It's not the entire angle and life of a story.
But as far as actually talking about the genre of Erased, it's like, even though the characters are children for a lot of it, it is actually marketed more to like adults, generally speaking. The story, as a side note,
It's kind of what's interesting about it, right? It's like, hey, kids have to stop a murderer, not a child-friendly murderer. This is not Scooby Doo. This is a
yeah,
real murder with the only people being aware of and actively trying to stop him being children.
exactly right. It's not a sort of child friendly mystery. This is a very it is a very adult story. It's just that sometimes for some of the story the characters are children. But what I wanted to say before we get into that is that it's a very interesting mix of genres, Erased, right? Because it's first and foremost a murder mystery. It is a crime mystery, but it has this sort of supernatural, sort of sci-fi slash fantasy. I would call it more fantasy twist with the time travel.
I would say supernatural thriller.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it, putting it, a sort of supernatural crime thriller. But on top of that, so much of the story is actually built on drama, and not in the way of, "Oh, it's a crime drama." Built on I mean, it is, but built on character drama. So much of what happens with the crime thriller mystery plot is wrapped up in and dependent on Satoru re-navigating his social life and dealing with the interpersonal and horrific drama that goes on there, especially in dealing with KO. It
Yeah.
gives it a very different feel to other stories.
It's a weird thing where despite having this supernatural ability, really his only tool he can use to try to solve the situation for the most part is his social connections and getting along with, getting help from, or helping these other people around him because pretty much at every point, every pivotal point in the story, he is otherwise helpless. He only has his knowledge and his connections because first he has no idea what's going on. Then he's a kid who doesn't have much idea what's going on and is surrounded by only other kids. And then he's a guy who just woke up from a coma that lasted half of his life. So like
Yeah,
he at no point is empowered or franchised during any of this.
you are exactly right in saying that at no point in this story, except for, like, the very end when he's pieced everything together and has the upper hand at last. But other than that, for, like, 1 to 2 episodes, basically, depending on which version you're watching or however many chapters if you're reading it, he is consistently armed with nothing other than the fact that he has been chucked back in time with the tiniest bit of knowledge that the people around him don't have. It's it's not like he knows who the killer is or anything, has advanced information. He simply knows who the victims are going to be before they are victims. He doesn't know who is going to do it or why or any of that.
Yeah.
That is all the information he has, and other than that, he is armed entirely and only with his ability to form relationships with other people, which is not a strong suit of his.
No, he pretty much had to develop it as a skill from nothing. He well, almost nothing. He was a significantly more social and outgoing person when he was younger, but never that much, and he only grew less so over time.
But they were never deep connections is the vibe I
That's
get. And
true.
then
They were
as an
very
adult
genuine, shallow childhood connections.
he is essentially friendless other than Irie, who has just decided she's his friend.
Mangaka, am I right?
Yeah. He is awkward, he is kind of depressed, honestly, in a lot of ways. He gives that vibe a bit, and he's on his own with little to no social connections. He's not one of those protagonists whose only weapon is their charisma, but they're actually good at it.
Yeah, even though there is a superpower, there is literally no power fantasy here. None whatsoever, especially because not like even though it is crucial to him solving these problems, even his special ability has a huge downside in that it almost seems like it's half a curse. I don't remember if they explicitly say it, but looking at it, there seems to be a common thread that every single time he changes something or makes something better through the use of his power, it ends up with him sacrificing something of himself. He seems to have to literally give up himself or parts of his life to use his ability. Like, it always ends up with something bad happening to him.
Yeah, it's never explicitly stated, and I don't think it is actually a part of the ability necessarily. It is just because of who he is, the fact he has no power, really, no tools at his disposal or anything like that. Himself, his regular, poorly connected mortal, and at one point, childhood self, is all he's got. So he is forced to put himself into dangerous or risky or otherwise non beneficial situations if he wants to benefit others.
Yeah, first my dude gets hit by a car, then he gets stuck
Yeah, we are
watching people
introduced by him getting hit by a car.
get dude gets hit by a car, then his mom gets murdered, then he gets framed, then he has to go back in time, then he gets murdered, but also not really, so he can't even use his
Oh,
superpower.
you forgot the part in the middle there where he, has to save a child from abuse as a child, thinks as well as murder, thinks he's succeeded, then she gets killed anyway, and he gets chucked right back into the timeline where he's been framed for his mother's murder and is on the run, then goes back and gets murdered himself. Except not really, because he's actually in a coma and goes through all that.
Yeah, like, it's every single time he tries to make things better, even when he succeeds, he makes things better for other people at the cost to himself.
What I really like that they've made him so powerless, right? That his success or failure hinges entirely on him forming healthy social connections between himself and others, because that's all he's got. Because that is actually healing and good for him as well. But it's just a very interesting dynamic. This idea that your only way to solve this problem is effectively to make friends, something that you've always been shit at. But it's like they do such a good job, especially during that first half where the story largely revolves around his efforts to save KO, of selling that drama and getting you invested in that drama, that sometimes you almost find yourself forgetting what the actual plot of the show is, and you're just invested in that storyline.
Yeah, the moment to moment is intense and gripping and, like, thoroughly encompassing of everything that's going on. This is very much a story that is made up of all of its pieces. You like everything about it is affecting and important, even the little moments that don't seem like it. It's one of those stories that is just a complete picture with all the pieces being important and good.
It's kind of funny when you think about it, though. You get through it's like I think it's roughly 6 episodes either way. It might be 8 in the animated version because it takes up a bit more of the percentage of the runtime. But you get through this storyline of this 11-year-old trying to save another sort of 10, 11-year-old from an abusive household. You get so invested in this storyline, you like, yeah, he did it, he saved KO. Wait, there's still like 6 episodes left. Oh right, this is actually a story about a 29-year-old who's been sent back in time to solve a murder.
We did it! Little girl saved from serial killer. What do you mean we're halfway through the show?
They sell the character drama so well, and that's so important, not just to the vibe of the show, because it is such a unique vibe, but also to the plot, because his ability to get involved in this drama and form these social connections and move people around socially effectively is his only tool.
Yeah, I love the idea of changing the power of friendship so that it's like, okay, can't you can't solve this problem. You can't win without the power of friendship. Oh, right, because friendship's the most powerful thing out. No, it's because you have nothing else. That's all you've got.
It's fun, like, the trope of the power of friendship is primarily a thing it's primarily a thing you see in children's media, but it does show up a lot in adult media too, even if it's less overt. But it takes a couple of forms, and there is it is a literal power form, which is much more exclusive to children's media, and then there is the, "No, it's a tool at your disposal" form, which is more what this is.
Yeah, like this is unironically what the power of friendship is in real life.
Exactly. It is something that can motivate you to better yourself and to succeed, and it is effectively a social network. It is other people who can lend their strengths to yours
Yeah.
and improve your chance of succeed, and they are pieces on the board that you can move through social manipulation or just genuinely asking for help, whichever works better is more your style.
Yeah, that's one of the things that kind of sucks. Not about the story, just sucks for the person going through it about like going back in time like this and having to do things is part of what you have to do to win and to change things, especially as an adult in a child's body, but even later when you're just somebody who knows something that nobody else knows. Honesty is important and you have to be willing to ask for help. But also there are some things you literally can't get done without giving in to like some genuine sociopathic tendencies and actually manipulating people, even sometimes your friends.
I wouldn't call that sociopathic tendencies. Sociopathy, for one thing, is very much defined by an inability to interact socially normally. You're thinking of psychopathy, and that's also very
That's
much
fair.
not what
Yeah.
this is because he experiences empathy.
No, what I'm saying is you have to give in to the actions of like
Yeah,
a sociopath. You have to manipulate even some of the people close to you who you care about and just take that pain on the chin. But then I also love that we get the twist of him essentially being hit partway through because of sweet, perfect boy, little Kenya
Kenya's so good. So stupidly smart.
being smarter than everybody else and being like, "Hey, asshole, if you want our help, why don't you just ask? Why don't you just let me help you, idiot?"
Wait, shit, was that an option?
Yeah, yeah, and he's just sitting there going, "Oh my god, I could have asked for help? Wait, people
Uh,
care about me and want to see me succeed?"
I in the live action version, Satoru like explicitly says, "How is he smarter than me? I'm 29."
Yeah. Oh, that's perfect. I wish he had said that in the anime. Oh my god, I mean, that is essentially the vibe we get, but I like that he just outright said it.
Yeah, you occasionally get like his narration over things that have happened or are happening of his thoughts on the matter, and his narration for his interaction with Kenya, who and his like it's funny his secret discussions with Kenya. I can't remember if it's like this in the anime as well, but in the live action, they always take place in stairwells.
Huh, you're right.
Which Kenya also like, or Satoru, one of them, I think it's Kenya, actually lampshades that in the live action. But he's like, why do we always have these discussions and end up having secret discussions in stairwells when they're like adults post coma?
Isn't he also on the stairwell up to either his or his mom's apartment, like, right when everything goes wrong at the beginning too? Isn't he going up the stairs? Why do I feel like I remember something horrible happening while he's on the
There
stairs?
are stairs. He goes upstairs because he has to get to his front door. It's his apartment, and but he's not nothing beyond that happens on the stairs.
Maybe that's just where the
He
thinking
runs
starts.
down
Maybe
them
it
again, covered in
cuts to
blood.
him coming up the stairs.
He gets seen covered in blood by his neighbor on the stairs, so that counts. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, honesty and just asking for help and forming social connections are very important. But to an extent, he does still have to be manipulative. But the show never frames this as a moral dilemma. It basically frames it as it kind of sucks for you to have to do this, but both you and the audience know that this is morally correct because there's no other way for you to do this.
I think that's also why that moment with Kenya is so important because I think he could have actually started leaning towards becoming a much more manipulative person and thinking manipulation was his only tool and thus really leaning in and giving into it instead of just using it as a tool. If he hadn't
Yeah,
had that shock and that moment of being like, "Oh, right. I can do both. I can take advantage of this foreknowledge and move things around, but I can also rely and lean on the people around me." I'm because when you're just manipulating people, ultimately, if you're a manipulator, you are still alone, even though everything you're doing is through or with other people. And that moment is what made him not alone in this.
it's an incredibly important moment for him, not only because it increases his chances of success, it recontextualizes so much. It's basically being shown you have made all these genuine connections with all of these people. You are not isolated. You can be around other people and have these genuine void filling connections in your life.
And you have to be, not only to succeed, but for your own sake.
It makes him a better, healthier, happier person as well in the long run, which is very important. As we can now perhaps move on to discussing a little bit about our villain. And this will be relevant to Satoru too, but it's worth noting. Now, Yashiro is a deeply disturbed individual. He grew up in a not a great situation. I believe that they watered down. I think it was a bit watered down what his origins actually were in the animated version. I might be remembering this wrong, but essentially, his older brother filled whatever emptiness was in his life through sexually abusing young girls. And he made Yashiro his lookout and accomplice. It was his job to make sure he didn't get caught whilst it was going on, and then to bribe the girls to keep them quiet, basically, which is already very disturbing. And through this really fucked up relationship with his brother became a central part of his life. This whole situation became what his life revolved around in so many ways. And then there was an incident where his brother fucked up, panicked, and killed one of his victims. And then he later on killed himself out of what Yashiro calls guilt. I'm calling fear of being caught.
Yeah, I don't think people who can do that kind of thing on the regular and literally even rope their younger sibling into it can properly feel guilt. The guilt part of their brain doesn't work properly. I'm sure it's there, but it's not lighting up like it's supposed to.
And suddenly that's gone, and Yashiro now has a very messed up set of formative years and a void in his own life that he now wants to fill. And he inevitably goes on to try and fill that void by killing young girls as a sort of reenactment of the crime that caused all this, basically. Notably, he is not sexually abusive. He just kills them because it's the incident that leads to his brother killing himself that triggered the void in his life that he's now reenacting and trying to fill his void like that.
Yeah, his pivotal moment that changed everything was a murder. So that's what anchored itself into his psyche, not the also horrible but much more gross part.
Yeah. And he's doing this, and it's having an effect. But then all of a sudden, whilst he's posing as a well, he's not posing. He's gotten his teaching qualification or whatever, and he is a teacher. All of a sudden, suddenly there's this kid who seems to know what he's going to do before he does it. He keeps beating him to his targets and like removing them from their isolation and removing their status as viable targets for him.
Which just seems wrong because Gaku is an extremely methodical and like detailed planner. He thinks so many steps ahead and is patient enough to make sure literally everything he needs to be anonymous and extremely far away from the problems he's creating before he does anything.
Even the reason he kills. I was looking at. Why did I not look up this character's name when I looked up Kumi's?
Oh,
One
good
second.
question.
Sugita. It's Hiromi Sugita.
Sugita, that's right.
The reason he killed Hiromi in the original timeline was because doing that would remove suspicion from himself.
Because why because oh look, the teacher's killing girls, but or I mean the killer is only killing girls. Oh wait, this one just kind of looks like a girl. He must have made
It
a
was a
mistake.
mistake.
That means he
Yeah.
couldn't possibly be the teacher who knows the genders slash sexes of all the students and probably knows them at least a little bit personally. He wouldn't make that mistake.
That is one of the things the animated version does better because it makes that explicitly clear. That is why he kills Hiromi.
Yeah.
They don't state that so much in the at all actually in the live. You can piece it together if you wanted to, but they never state that in the live action one. So the animated one does a slightly better job in that way of making it clear how methodical and clever Yashiro is. Yeah, so he's very good at what he does, as messed up as it is. He is a smart killer, and that makes it even more baffling to him that Satoru is continuously this child is continuously heading him off and removing viable targets from the playboard, basically.
Yeah, because that should be impossible. All these well-connected adults and actual investigators and everything can't find shit and can't do anything to slow me down or get in my way. How is this kid doing it?
But like in this really twisted way, he starts realizing that he's become invested in this weird cat and mouse game between himself and this kid who is not actually a kid, but he doesn't know that.
Well, especially because he's also he was a bit of a father figure to him when he was younger like that.
Oh,
Not a
a lot
proper
of one.
like, yeah, he's like, because part of his persona is the perfect guy. Although, one of the crazy parts of him as a serial killer is not all of his persona is fake.
I would say one of the funniest things about that situation is that he actively finds himself giving advice to Satoru that is then later used against him to get these kids out of isolation. But because he has to because he's the teacher.
Because he has to be a good teacher, but also because he kinda can't help it. He's like he genuinely simultaneously is looking at him as his student and kind of enjoying seeing him grow and become more outgoing, even though it's literally a problem for him, which is how he kind of gets addicted to the game.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like he does get addicted to the game. He says I don't remember the exact words, but he says himself like he has never felt so alive than in this cat and mouse game. The void that he has been trying to fill has never felt so small than playing this game of cat and mouse. Him actively trying to kill these girls and Satoru actively trying to save them.
Yeah, he was too pragmatic and methodical and perfect before.
That conflict, he's feeding on it and thriving on it. And he basically, even though Satoru, once he finds out, doesn't see it this way at all. He like Satoru is just like, I'm just doing what I got to do to save these people. He doesn't see this as a personal contest at all. He doesn't really give a shit who is doing the crime. He just wants to protect these people and make sure, including the person who is framed. But Biyashiro, he sees this kid as the Batman to his Joker, and the happiest day of his life is when Satoru comes out of the coma and they get to play the game again.
Yeah, he realizes that in this horrible, awful way that Satoru filled the void that had been in his soul ever since his brother's death. It wasn't it ultimately wasn't even the actual literal serial killings. It was Satoru and the game he played with him. He felt so alive, and the cat and mouse Batman Joker game was so addicting that he feels the void creep back in when Satoru's gone and is actually really happy about him waking up from the coma.
I don't remember how clear the animation makes it, but the live action version, Kenya and the male reporter whose name I've forgotten, who used to work with Sajiko, they are still actively working on the case in the future when Satoru has been comatose, because they're still piecing things together and things like that. And one thing they note is that the crimes are not exactly getting sloppier, but he stops like going to all the effort of like framing other people and things like that. And when you think about it, it's because he's missing the cat and mouse game. He's trying to invite it back into his life by not doing the frame job and making it like there's clear there's still a killer out there.
Oh, that would have been a nice detail to get in the anime. I wonder if the manga goes into it.
They don't say it outright. It's just, but it's clear that they make it clear that he has stopped framing people, and that is the logical conclusion as to why. Especially once he makes it apparent himself when he's talking to Satoru later on. He sort of says, "You know, that the void, I can't fill it, but you did it." And it's not like he's not invested in killing. Like he still gets some relief, shall we say, by committing these murders.
Yeah,
And even with Kumi, toward the end, like Satoru basically says, like, "Well, you weren't even planning to kill her, were you? You were just trying to lure me out." And he's like, "No, I was going to kill her. I was fully committed to
she
that.
was
It's just that I
definitely bait, but
also,
also, of course, I was gonna kill her.
yeah, I just also had complete faith that you would show up to stop me." Was basically what he says. He is a really messed up but very interesting villain.
Yeah, he's way more competent and yet also believable than most serial killers you see, at least in like fictionalized stories. Definitely in anime. Anime tends to really not flanderize but hyperbolize most serial killer type characters like really thoroughly. And this guy is disturbingly believable, but also disturbingly like I don't even want to say smart. I want to say competent because he is smart, but like whatever, all serial killers are usually smart in fiction. But he on top of being smart is an extremely believable person and in a horribly twisted way, like I said earlier, even a slightly genuine person while he's being this sick freak.
You look at his history and you understand how he got to where he is, and you understand and, like, you see the way he acts and with in his mentor role and things like that. You get a very clear picture of who this person is, and you can very easily understand how he thinks and why he does the horrible shit he does,
Yeah.
and that makes him compelling.
And you also even get, like, evidence and reasons to believe that even some of the traits of his personality in everyday life that are typical to a serial killer or lend to his hobby as a serial killer, are also actually just normal, genuine traits of him that happen to line up with that, like, the whole thing about, "Oh, man, look, he's got all this candy in his glove box." Serial killer who kills kids has candy, and it's like, yeah, but also he is a teacher, and also I'm pretty sure he's telling the truth about having quit smoking.
Yeah,
And
I
then
that feels like a very hastily thrown together excuse to me, so I don't know about that.
I don't know. I
He might have bet like, he might have been telling the truth about quitting smoking, but we all know why those lollipops were in his were in his glove
well,
box.
kind of like because I just don't know. I don't know because for one thing, the real tools he has and the real manipulation he uses is so much more refined that he couldn't possibly need that candy at all
It's
to do
it's
it.
mostly the reason they do that, I think, is it's one of the little hints they drop that it's been him
Well,
the whole
that's
time.
what I mean. I
Because
like about it.
they are sprinkled throughout, like the finger tapping, quirk he's got and things like that.
Yeah, I just like that it feels like it is both a hint, but also possibly an actual part of his personality in the same way that he is being a good student and being a good teacher and kind of liking seeing his student succeed beyond the cat and mouse thing. That's the scary thing about him is that he's a serial killer who outside of his literal serial killing has some disturbingly real feeling humanity mixed in.
And I mean, yeah, like people often think about serial killers just in the terms of, oh, they're the serial killer, like that's all they do, like that's their 9 to 5. But when the reality is that most killers have rich outer lives outside of the homicide. They are actual people with hobbies and jobs and family and all this other stuff going on in their lives. They're not inhuman. The reason that serial killers and like are really so disturbing and fascinating in how disturbing they are is because they are just people. And that means, in theory, anyone could snap one day and be a killer. And that's one of the things that makes them so disturbing, but also interesting.
Yeah, it's like, um, despite being so different, serial killers tend to be terrifying, at least the competent ones, for the same reason that the Joker, for instance, is both terrifying but also kind of unrealistic. Because a lot of them are born from the same principle as the Joker, the one bad day. There's a lot more to it than that, but most people, at least in fiction, but at least a fair few of the stories I've heard in real life too, who go down that road, they obviously have the thing wrong in their brain, the thing missing that allows them to become a serial killer. But a lot of them also lived fairly normal lives. And then something happened that triggered either that rush or that euphoria or that feeling of completeness that they get from the killing, and they could never go back, but they were still a
Yeah,
complete person. That was just a new part of them that was unlocked that they could not let go of or would not.
yeah, Yashiro is not just a very interesting and compelling villain, but he's a very believable villain as a killer that he is. You know, he feels like someone that could exist, and that makes him scarier, but it also makes him more believable and more compelling as a character than a sort of caricature of the idea of a serial killer. He's also a really good foil for Satoru as our protagonist because both of them we know feel this emptiness in their lives. Satoru, as we are introduced to him, is just kind of going through the motions. You know, he's got a menial pizza job that he doesn't like, but he's not willing to accept a higher position because he's afraid that will mean giving up on the dream of being a manga author that he is still clutching to,
Yeah,
even though he is constantly rejected for his work as being soulless, effectively. So he's got a very empty life, and he feels that same emptiness.
Yeah, in a weird way, they're opposite sides of the same spectrum. Because not only is Satoru a good person, unlike him, but Satoru, despite they both have the same void in them, but Satoru was doing almost literally nothing to fill it. He was literally just living through it, whereas Yashiro will do anything to fill that void.
Satoru sort of just reflexively, because he's a good person, because he's been raised by Sachiko,
He he can't be a bad person with Sachiko for a mom.
like, he fixes problems with revival, he goes through that, but some of that you get the vibe is because he doesn't wanna get stuck in a revival loop. But through the course of the show, you realize that he is starting to learn to fill that void, both with healthy social connections and through those connections, helping people. He finds a way to fill that void, which is much healthier and more beneficial to himself and others than Yashiro, finds to fill his void, and how Yashiro's brother filled his void even, which is it's nice. It's both nice and pleasant, and it doesn't feel trite, which that sort of message often does. It doesn't feel trite in this scenario for whatever reason, and it's well executed, and it's just a really good example of a villain and protagonist being foils for each other, and for very subtle but well implemented character development in Satoru.
And man, I don't know how much overlap there is with the live action version, but in the anime at least, that little ending confrontation is so good. I love them kind of letting it look scary and like nothing is wrong, and it's such a thorough catharsis in every way from every angle, in that even Yashiro ends up getting catharsis actually in the moment he loses. Like, it's so perfect.
So, for one, the way I think that the live action does the latter half of or the latter third or whatever of the of the story a little bit better. I think it's paced better. Although I would argue the animated one actually does the first half better, as better paced. But basically, the post KO part of the show, I think the live action one does better, especially the post coma part, because it's not like 2 episodes. That's like the last 3, 4 episodes or whatever. And it's I don't know, it's just paced a little bit better. But the confrontation there, and the execution of the sting take a different form, but the general gist is more or less the same. They're on a bridge, not a rooftop, for one thing, a bridge over a river. And Yashiro basically sets the bridge on fire and is like, "Yeah, we're both gonna die here. This is the end of the game," kind of deal. And Satoru just drops his crutches and tackles him off the bridge into the river, and they both live, which completely fucks Yashiro's plans, as well as results in Kumi being saved and all that. And then the cops turn the lights on,
Dang.
and his very crappy glued on facial hair disguise starts coming off in the river.
I see. I would really like to see the extended longer post-coma bit. Although I will say, just from the description at least, I do like the actual last moment and last confrontation better with how the anime does it. If only because it has the setup of him relying on everybody he's made connections with, and
Oh, they are all still
oh,
involved.
okay,
Like, to be
good,
clear,
good, because that's the best part for
they're
me.
just not doing the really silly cartoonish
The Scooby Doo, the literal
fire
Scooby Doo
the
confrontation with
yeah.
him, that's that okay.
With the circus fireman net thing with the blanket or whatever.
Okay,
Yeah,
that I'm okay with.
it's they are all, yeah. His allies are all still involved. It's just it's a much more believable sting operation.
Okay, I like that. If it's pretty much the same thing, but just a more realistic and less Scooby Doo way of executing it, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, he figures it out, and then Kenya basically uses the fact that he figured it out as confirmation for himself, because he also had been suspecting Yashiro at this point, because he's Kenya. He's smart as
He's
hell,
smart.
and he's been working with this reporter guy on it. But he had no concrete proof until Satoru was like, "Yeah, no, it was Yashiro," and they arranged this sting using Kumi as bait, effectively, which is really. Although they are invested in this idea, like it's like this outing for all the kids at the long term inpatient in outpatients or
Mhm.
whatever for the hospital. This outing for them, basically, that Yashiro his his part of the government or the board or whatever sponsors. Yashiro goes there in disguise as part of the help and is planning to murder Kumi there as part of his confrontation with Satoru. And they're basically also using her as bait to get him to admit to his crimes and get him caught and things. But they are committed. They don't tell Kumi. They are just giving her a really nice day.
I do love in total the vibe of like not only relying on the connections to win, but I also love the moment of like this is the end of the game. Good job. We both win. We both lose. We're gonna die together. Me and the person who in a way completed me by trying to stop me. Isn't it beautiful? This is the end of the game. Response, fuck you. This was never a game to me.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing that's different, right? Because in the animated version, I don't think Yashiro's planning to die. He's just shoving Satoru off of a roof, and I think the plan is to make it look
Oh,
like
you're right.
suicide,
He
right?
wasn't planning to die. It was more like as soon as he went, "Ah, I win. He's dead."
Yeah,
Then he immediately went, "Oh god, my life is empty without him," and then was gonna jump after him.
yeah, and then sees that he's been caught in the like makeshift net.
I
Yeah,
think him deciding for it to be a murder suicide is better. I think that's a change for the better in the live action.
because that was it. That was the end of the game for him
Mm.
in his mind as well. He would have won. There would have been nothing left. He would go out on his own terms, happy, rejecting the standards of a world he despises.
Especially because, like, how is he gonna feel like he lost and like he was stopped when he made it all the way to what, like 50 before the game ended? He
Yeah,
got his period of time living his life exactly the way he wanted.
yeah. It was basically the game is over. I've won, and now I'm going out on my own terms before there's any misery. And Satoru tackles him off the bridge into the river and basically says, "No, fuck you. You're going to prison. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my
Yeah,
life."
like I can't help but just really love it. Th- One of my favorite things is when the character who beats another character partially beats them because, but also just mainly just does not share any of their motivations or feelings or give a fuck about what they want. Like, I can't help but love just condensing it down to our game is over. Fuck you. This isn't a game. Like.
Yeah. I mean, the wildest, like, one of the wildest things about all that, right, is that Yashiro won the first
He
time.
did. He won. He, for all intents and purposes, killed. He killed his opponent. He won the game. It's just that sometimes people don't die when they're killed.
Yeah, it was pure the most unlikely chance that Satoru survived in a coma and was still cared for by Sachiko, because she's so faultlessly
And in a
dedicated.
way, even that is still winning because that was another 15 years of him being the only player in the game. He took the other player off the board.
Yeah, and he hated it. Like it wasn't the same, and then suddenly the game is still on, and he's all excited about it. He thinks he's won again, and then right as he's on the high, it's just stripped away from him. It's so good.
It's I love it. It's so thoroughly cathartic. Even that I wouldn't say it's a good thing that he gets what he wants, but it is fitting for the story and everything wrapped up together that in a way even Yashiro gets what he wants because even in the moment of losing, he's kind of also okay with losing because he had fun. The freak.
I mean, he's going he's in prison for the next like 7 years on death row or something, and it's yeah. So he is still gonna die, but but he has a long hollow existence before then of just being abjectly miserable, which is
Yeah.
nice.
He may get to hold on to the fact that he played his game and he had fun, but that's all he gets.
And all of those people that Satoru helped go on to have long, full, happy lives. And because of him, like they all look up to him. KO explicitly says to him on multiple occasions that that he became her hero. And mad respect to Satoru. He is like just as a like he is such a good character and such a good person. Like she shows up with a baby, Hiromi's
And they were
baby, and
starting to
and
fall for
instead of
each other and kinda have a childhood romance before all that happened
which was
too.
weird, to be fair.
I mean, it's a little weird until you remember, but it helps that he is kind of falling back more into being his childhood self when they're kind of like
Yeah,
falling for each other.
but he looks at this and he sees that she's had this life as a win, and that Hirobi got to have this life as a win. He's such a good person. The fan base, however,
Oh yeah.
when this all came out, were pissed, and I'm like, well, what did you think was going to happen? The dude was in a coma for 15 years. Of course, people moved on,
Unfortunately,
had their
you
own
can't trust
lives.
any fan base, especially in anime or manga fan base, to see, "Oh man, the girl my dude was having a thing with, fell in love with and got pregnant with someone else." Fucking a bunch of idiot people being like, "I can't believe they cucked my boy."
No, this was a victory for everybody,
That's why I
man.
love it. I love that he doesn't even for a second ever look at it or feel that way. He's just instantly like,
It does possibly help that he's actually hasn't like he's gone to have that first life probably contributed to some of that because he's like, well, yeah, I mean, I was an adult anyway. Well, this probably contributed, but yeah, like I really like that about him as a character. That he looks at the situation, he looks at all these people who have moved on and had their lives without him, and it hurts a bit, but he views it as a win because it means he
'cause that's
succeeded.
what he was trying to do. He was trying to give them their lives back, and he did.
Yeah, he it's interesting, like, he manages to be an incredibly good person without ever feeling unbelievable. Like, a lot of time, like, paragons and the like, they feel unbelievable in how good they are, but with him, it feels so genuine.
Yeah, he's not a perfect person, he's just a really good person, like his mom.
Yeah, who who is simultaneously one of the most perceptive characters in existence. She always knows when you are lying to her or fucking with her.
He is a
She
witch
always
after all.
notices everything, but she is such a bad liar, which is just one of her many endearing traits. But yeah, I mean, guys, both versions of the show, and I'm sure the manga as well, are very good stories. They're very enjoyable, full of very likable characters, very interesting characters, and a very captivating overall plot in all its elements. Both the sort of the drama elements, the mystery and thriller elements. It's all very good. Both have their flaws. Neither is perfect, but all iterations of this story are very good, and I would highly recommend watching it.
Yeah, they're very good, they're very well written, but more than anything else, and unfortunately, this isn't what gets ratings. Because when I looked it up, the ratings of the shows were both, like, lower than I expected.
Yeah, I
But,
think they're both, like, upper middling.
one thing this show or the shows do better than most other things I've ever seen, not just good, but better, is emotional intelligence. The emotional intelligence of this story is so high.
Yeah, everything feels so believable and real despite the fact its premise is rooted in a form of time travel.
It's rare for me to have ever seen a story that, despite certain parts of it obviously and intentionally being unbelievable, like, literally everything that's not literally impossible in reality is so believable here. Like, it's just, it feels so down to earth and thoughtful to the point where who wrote this could have easily wrote could have easily written any, like, crime thriller, serial killer story.
Or even just a sort of character
They're
drama,
obviously
to be honest.
extremely good at not just, like, creating webs of social connections and stuff, but at navigating them and getting into the characters' heads and feelings, because I this is one of the few stories I can see where not only is it good, I just straight up believe almost literally every single thing that happens along the way, even some of the sillier bits.
Yeah, it does have a really distinct sort of vibe to it, right? The specific mix of like different elements the story and the premise have, and the way that those different elements are emphasized and where they are emphasized. Like the whole thing with KO, right? That takes up the first sort of 6 episodes of the live action one. You get so invested in the drama of that story that not only, like I said, you sometimes forget that you're watching a much broader, different story, but also it does such a good job of getting you invested in the characters and humanizing them and showing you who Satoru is as a person as well. It's so integral, but it feels so central even when it's not. It's things like that, like yeah, just the way it's all pieced together is very intelligently done and very like well crafted, and ends up feeling so different, even if its individual elements have all been done before.
Yeah, I love Erased. Real good.
It is really good. For now, though, we can probably leave that there. I think we've discussed everything really that I wanted to discuss. How about you?
Can't think of anything else, and we didn't even flinch at going over times. It was easy to keep talking.
I don't think we're that far over, to be fair, because we started a little bit late,
That's true, but according
and
to
we'll see where it comes down to with the
but
editing.
according to when the recording started, we're almost 20 minutes over.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which I'm not complaining about. I just mean that's just evidence of how easy it is to talk about this and to be invested and have thoughts and feelings on this. Also, even though it's not in the English title, I do appreciate the symbolism and the connection between the term erased and like what the original title was, which I don't remember it exactly word for word, but it's essentially the town.
The town where only I exist, I
No, the
think.
town where only I am missing, I think.
Yes, the town where only
It's
I
pretty
am
much
missing,
the
which
town
is
without me.
the name the name of a personal essay that KO wrote.
Yeah, but also in a very real way, a thing because that's both who and what KO is before he saves her, but it's also it also speaks
The
very
world he starts
it's the
in.
world he starts in, but also the world of him because he literally gives up his place in the world for a
Yeah,
long
so
time in the
true.
process of doing this. In the process of saving these people he's come to care about, he creates the town where only he is without him, where only he is missing.
That is so true. We love motifs and thematics.
Theming.
There it is, a throwback. All right. Yes. Ending the episode though. If you guys enjoyed this, you can also, and we're listening to this elsewhere, you can also, of course, find these episodes on my site, radfordwrites.com. I also post blogs and articles about various writerly things there, other stories and poetry shows up there, and you can buy my books through the store there as well. You can also find John on Twitch and YouTube as Sephir, Sephear, as well as collaborating with me on various other projects.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that. How's that for a succinct outro? Don't murder children. Goodbye.
Bye bye.